Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 1989 Christmas comedy National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. Now, this is the third entry in the Vacation franchise. The initial plan for this third movie wasn't really a Christmas film. It was a Australian vacation. In fact, Chevy Chase worked with Eric Idle, who was the British guy who always gets injured in European Vacation, and they worked on a draft or a concept for a third Vacation movie that took place in Australia. But it really didn't pan out. It didn't really work. So plans for a third Vacation film were essentially put on hold for a good amount of time until around 1988 or 1989 when the concept was brought up again and Warner Brothers expressed interest in doing another Vacation film. And this time around they also got John Hughes involved. And John Hughes, he was hesitant about doing it when it comes to writing the film, unless he was able to find a reason or some kind of personal connection with this story, like he did in the first Vacation. And he found a National Lampoon article named Christmas 59, and that made him decide to turn the third Vacation film into a Christmas movie. And I think it really does fit, even though they don't really go on vacation. Like this is like the one Vacation movie where it doesn't necessarily live up to the title because it's not like they really go on vacation. They stay home. They drive out to the country, I guess, a few times. They do go outside the house, but there's no cross country vacation. There's no getting in the truckster and driving to a particular location. There's no getting on a plane and going anywhere. It's just the Griswolds at home having their Christmas. That's really what it is. But it still fits within the Vacation franchise because it deals with these characters. And I don't think there was really any other way to have these characters in this without having the name of the franchise in the title of the film, despite the fact that it's kind of an oxymoron because they don't ever go on vacation in this movie. It's directed by Jeremiah S. Chechik, and Jeremiah S. Chechik was not even the first director that was initially courted or chosen to do this film. In fact, Chris Columbus was actually the first guy, the first director, and I guess he did not get along with Chevy Chase at all, to the point where he simply refused to do the movie. And that's crazy, especially when it comes to the fact that at this point in time, Chris Columbus had not directed anything. So this was a big deal. This is a big opportunity for him. And he turned it down and passed it up because he couldn't stand working with Chevy Chase. Thankfully for Chris Columbus, it worked out because he wound up doing another Christmas film, Home Alone. But yeah, he took a big risk though, completely just leaving this film. And Chevy wanted George Roy Hill, who did Funny Farm, because he felt that the working relationship he had with George was really strong. But George retired after Funny Farm because Funny Farm didn't really do that well financially. So they had to kind of scramble to find a director, and then wound up getting Jeremiah S. Chechik, who hadn't directed a feature film before this either. He had just done a music video for Van Halen. And the direction is actually pretty decent. It's pretty solid, pretty good. It's honestly better than you might think, considering it's the first time effort from a music video director. It doesn't really seem like a film where it feels like it's just a music video, like other music video directors' output tend to look or feel like. And yeah, I think he did a really solid job in terms of capturing the comedic nature of the movie, having the right amount of Christmas spirit and energy to the film. I think the film has some really nice looking shots in it of the whole Christmas uh, decor, as well as the aesthetic, which is a really good way to put it. Um, Even in the moments where there's actually a bit of action, like the opening scene, which is in a lot of ways kind of like a car chase, complete with a stunt where the truckster winds up underneath a logging truck. It's shot in a way that is really quite efficient and solid and really impressive if you think about it from the perspective of it being a first time director. And there's a lot of different sort of scenes in this that are just absolute chaos. And it feels very measured in terms of the way that these shots are framed and the way that these shots are directed by Chechik. The stuff in the finale with the SWAT team breaking in, or even prior to that with the squirrel jumping out of the tree, or the cat in the present that electrocutes itself. Just all this stuff could just lead to a very wild and uneven looking movie, and it doesn't really appear to be one of those instances. And yeah, I think Jeremiah S. Chechik deserves a little more credit than he gets for his direction in this. The way that he shot the scenes with Clark and the various different moments of slapstick involving Chevy Chase were hilarious, and the director really nailed and knew how to shoot Chevy in a way that really emphasizes his physical comedic talents. Even the sequences with the Christmas lights, just the way that that was shot was very well done. And overall, it's a really solid directing job by Jeremiah S. Chechik. The script by John Hughes is fantastic. This is something that was so sorely missing from the previous installment, and something that was missing from Vegas Vacation or the Vacation reboot, is this connection that John Hughes has with the writing, this personal connection. You could tell that he's infusing a lot of himself into this script. And it also helps that John Hughes is already very familiar with these characters, with the Griswolds, with Clark and Ellen, and Rusty and Audrey, and Cousin Eddie, and all of these other characters. So he knows what makes them tick, and he knows what makes them click. And I think there are just a lot of really funny, clever lines of dialogue. The rant that Clark has at the end when he gets the Jelly of the Month Club as his bonus. The various other moments prior to that, like the sequence when he's giving his goodbyes to people who are co-workers at his job, and he's telling some of them to kiss his ass. And even just little things like the whole stuff with the tree sap and Clark and just his lovable dopiness, like the whole scene in the attic, which I love, which is a great bit of character development for Clark, showing some old home movies uh, with him when he was a kid, with his family, and all that is juxtaposed with typical Chevy Chase slapstick. You have the stuff where he's setting up the lights. You have the neighbors who are these yuppies who absolutely get put through the ringer in this movie, and I love that addition to this script. I think it's hilarious. It's a great contrast to the Griswolds. And then, of course, you have the extended family. Not only do you have Cousin Eddie and his family that make a reappearance here, but you also have members of Ellen's family, as well as Clark's family. You get to see Clark's parents and Ellen's parents, and there's just a great feel by John Hughes for the joy of these family gatherings, coupled together with the despair and the just aggravating, annoying aspects of these visits, because there are a lot of good things that can come from having the family over for the holidays, but then there's also a lot of other stuff that can come from that that is the complete opposite. And I think this script is one of the best that really nails that dynamic when it comes to family get-togethers during Christmas time. And even though this is PG 13, there are still some moments that are very in line with some of the darker, some of the more mean spirited humor from the first movie. Chevy's flipping people off on the side of the road. You've got the scene where he cuts down the Christmas tree while dressed like Jason Voorhees with a chainsaw. And there's a few other moments, like even the whole bit with Cousin Eddie kidnapping his boss. I mean, even that is pretty dark. So yeah, I really like that. And I also really enjoy how John Hughes took the schmaltzy aspects of a Christmas film and blended them together with the Vacation franchise, with these characters, the Griswolds. I think it actually is something that isn't really as jarring as you might think. It actually works really well in terms of this pairing of having, the schmaltzy Christmas movie tropes mixed with what the Vacation franchise was known for. I will say this, though. Rusty and Audrey, they're not really given as much to do here when it comes to the script. Would have been nice to have had them provided with a few more moments that actually felt like they not necessarily belonged, but felt like they were making more of an impact than they ultimately did. And I can kind of understand why, because you have all these other characters, all these other extended family members. You're bringing in Cousin Eddie again. But I still think they could have done a little bit more with Rusty and Audrey. Um, but that's really like one of the few things. Like there's that. Um, there's like a little few other little quibbles here and there. I think it really has to do with some of the jokes. Some of the humor at times can be a little too on the nose, or it can be a little too camp. Like that whole bit with the sledding, where Clark gets on the sled and puts some kind of fluid on it, and he goes screaming across the highway into a Walmart parking lot. Like that whole bit, I've never really been super big on that sequence. Felt kind of not necessarily half-assed, but it just felt kind of forced in there. Like it didn't really feel as natural as a lot of the other stuff. I mean, even the whole scenes with Clark hitting on the gal who works behind the counter. Like that actually that felt right in line with this franchise because of the whole stuff with him and the Ferrari girl in the first movie. And then that leads to his dream sequence where he dreams about the pool and then he sees the girl there. And that fits, but the stuff with the sled, like I don't really feel that really fit the film that well. There's a couple other jokes that I didn't really find that funny, like the stuff with I think it was it Aunt Bethany or something, where she's forgetful because of what seems like Alzheimer's, and that's funny because she doesn't know how to say grace properly or any of that, and I just thought it was just kind of sad more than funny. Really, that whole bit was like, really, we're gonna take something like Alzheimer's and we're gonna try to turn it into a joke. Like that didn't really work for me. And it's not because I'm easily offended or anything, or I want things to be politically correct. By no means is that the case. It's just I felt like that's all they did with that character. Like it just felt mean and lazy. But that's really about it, though. I mean, now there's also that stuff with that dog Snots because it's funny because he's got a issue where he's called Snots because his nose runs all the time, and I just so there's stuff like that, but for the most part, though, this is a really solid, really special script that really does a great job capturing the holiday spirit, as well as the spirit of these iconic characters, the Griswolds. And speaking of the Griswolds, I mean, you can't have a vacation film without Chevy Chase and Beverly D'Angelo. And the two are terrific yet again in this. They still have really great chemistry. They still have a good rapport with one another. And they just make these films feel very homey. It really does. They feel like it's kind of a home away from home kind of thing because these two are just so good together and you enjoy their company so much. And Chevy Chase is just once again a master of deadpan and a master of manic rants. And Juliette Lewis and Johnny Galecki, who play Audrey and Rusty, they're fine. The thing is, like I said, they're not given a whole lot to work with in terms of scenes. So it's hard to really say or criticize their performance that much because they're just kind of there. Uh, John Randolph, I really liked as Clark's dad. That there was a really nice, heartwarming scene between him and Chevy near the end, where he talks about how you know it's okay. Sometimes this happens. Sometimes you screw things up, and Clark's like, "How did you get through it with the help of a lot of Jack Daniels?" I really love that scene, and I think John Randolph was a really good casting choice. I think Diane Ladd was also an equally good casting choice to play Chevy Chase's mother, Clark's mom. E.G. Marshall was hilarious as Ellen's father. Upton Pratt himself from Creepshow. Doris Roberts, who you might recognize from other uh, shows later on in her career, specifically Everybody Loves Raymond as Marie. She's there as the boozy mother of Ellen. I thought she and E.G. Marshall were a good pair. Uh, Randy Quaid was once again hilarious, despite the fact that he's so obnoxious and still such a douchey character. Like this cousin Eddie is not really that likable of a guy, but you love to hate this character because Randy Quaid does such a good job playing this obnoxious, boorish character. And there was just a few other standouts in the cast. I mean, you have William Hickey, who played Uncle Lewis, who has the toupee and is always smoking the cigar. Mae Questel, this was her final film role before she ultimately passed in 1998 as Aunt Bethany. She did fine with what she was tasked to do. She was supposed to be the forgetful, uh, uh, aloof aunt who doesn't remember things, and she pulled that off well, almost too well at times. Julia Louis-Dreyfus plays Margot, the one of the yuppie neighbors. Nicholas Guest plays the other one, plays the husband of Margot. The two of them are also a terrific duo. I loved their scenes. Uh, they really did add a nice different feel or nice little extra uh, bit of hilarity to the film, and you could definitely see why Julia Louis-Dreyfus would go on to become a bigger star in Seinfeld pretty soon after this, actually. Brian Doyle Murray, he's in this as Clark's boss. I thought he did a good job too, as the curmudgeon boss who just wants to get the highest bottom line and doesn't really think that much about other people. And what's crazy is Brian Doyle Murray was actually in the first Vacation. He played the guy who is at the front desk at the rent a tent place, and I thought that was kind of fun that you had a guy who was in the first film who played a different character here. Natalia actually Nogalich. She played Frank's wife. Nicolette Scorsese. I don't know if she's related to Martin Scorsese. I don't think she is. It's a different Scorsese. She plays the lingerie counter clerk. Um, and she was definitely a nice sight to see. But yeah, it's a good cast. Great cast, actually. Good is an understatement. It's a great cast. The film also features some cinematography by Thomas E. Ackerman, which I think really does stand out the most when it comes to the sequence with the Christmas lights and everything, and a lot of the other moments that involve the holiday feel of the film. The cinematography is also coupled well with the editing by Jerry Greenberg and Michael A. Stevenson, as well as the music by Angelo Badalamenti, the same guy who scored Blue Velvet. Yeah, the same guy who scored Twin Peaks scored the music for Christmas Vacation. And that's done on purpose because I guess the producers, they made a conscious effort to select a guy to do the music who had never done a comedy before. And this actually is one of the best scores. I actually would say it is the best score in the Vacation franchise for me, which is crazy because it's from the guy who did Twin Peaks. But maybe that's why, because he was really intrigued by the opportunity and really liked and really loved the challenge of doing a comedy score, which is so different from what he normally does. I know that Lindsey Buckingham was approached to do another song for this. He's the guy who did Holiday Road and Dancing Across the USA for the soundtrack for the first movie, but he passed because he didn't want to be known as a soundtrack guy. So they had a different singer do the Christmas Vacation song. I think it's a good song. I really do like the Christmas vacation theme. It's a different kind of song, um, but yeah, it's actually written by Randy Newman and Barry Mann and Cynthia Weil, and is performed by Mavis Staples. And I think it's every bit as iconic in some ways as Holiday Road. When I think of Christmas, this is one of like the first songs that comes to mind. Probably because I watched this film so many times during the holiday season growing up, along with stuff like A Christmas Story. Um, but yeah, it's a fun bit of music that definitely does fit the cheery uh but chaotic vibe of the movie. And I've also always liked this poster. It really does fit the movie. Even though this doesn't happen, he never gets electrocuted, it still fits the whole vibe of Christmas Vacation really well. So, I don't know what else to say about this Christmas classic except thanks for watching my review. And as always, until next time, I'll see you later. See ya.